Welcome to the Dear Applicants podcast, where we dive into practical tips, insightful interviews, and explore personal stories that will hopefully inspire and motivate you to pursue your dreams and achieve your university admission goals. Hello, everyone. Just want to let you know that we're going to be holding a speaker series on US and UK admissions over the weekend of the 2nd and 3rd of September. If you're in Singapore or will be at the time, do hop over to ivyprep.com.sg/US-UK event today to register for the event. Looking forward to seeing you there. Hello, students and parents, and welcome to another episode of Dear Applicants. I'm your host, Jonathan, and with me today is Divya. Divya went to Brown and did her master's at Cambridge. She is now a strategist at IvyPrep. She is also a prolific writer and is involved with and has been published by several publications, online mostly, I think. Right?
Yeah.
She is also a semi-professional pole dancer and instructor and has competed in a bunch of different competitions in both the US as well as the UK. Thank you very much for joining us today. How are you?
No worries. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming all the way down here. Let's start chronologically since we like to do that over here at IvyPrep. You at UWC to begin with.
Yes.
Oh, did you grow up in Singapore?
So I grew up in Singapore. My early life, I spent some time in Switzerland because I come from a diplomat family. And then I was in Singapore and I was at a local school for my primary school education. And then I moved to international school. Eventually for high school, I ended up at UWC, the Dover campus. And yeah, I did the IB. Had a great time.
Tell us about your time at UWC. I mean, Dover's a lovely campus, right? I went to uni right next door.
Yeah, it was beautiful. The campus was great. And also I just like the student culture was really fun. And I guess I just particularly enjoyed my teachers there, especially. And I think that's where I really developed my love for writing and English because I had a really, really good English teacher, David White. He was great. And I got to read so many interesting books for my IB HL Lit course. And I think that just kind of really solidified my interest in literature. So I think that kind of was the defining part of my education there.
You sat for your IB exams in May 2017.
Yeah, I did.
So we were doing the same lit class then. What were your what were the books that you guys
I
did?
had Wuthering Heights, which I love, actually. I had Atonement. I had The English Patient. And I had
all of them.
And I had one more, The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene. That one.
Oh, you guys did The Power and the Glory?
Yeah.
Why didn't we do that? I quite like that one. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of different ones though. We did Dr. Zhivago, A Doll's House.
A Doll's House, yeah, I remember that.
Something that was a little bit more Indian. I think it was by R.K. Narayan. I can't remember the title for the life of me. And one more, which was my favorite, and now I'm forgetting. It's horrible. By Pablo Neruda. Death and the Maiden. Is it by Pablo Neruda?
Neruda also, we also had Neruda for our translated texts thing.
Yeah, okay, wait. So that would have been...
So we had the Captain's Verses.
Okay.
And we also did Milan Kundera for our translated text thing. And now he's my favorite author. So I heard about him through the IB literature, and he became my favorite author, which is really nice.
Yeah, we also had a very strange English teacher. He was it was an international school, but he was the only international teacher there, or at least looked international. And I don't think he's there anymore. Strange man. His name was actually Peter Strange. Odd guy. But anyways, you were telling us about how your time at UWC helped you develop your love of writing and of literature. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, I think I've always loved to read. I started reading really early, and I've just loved to read since I can remember. And I think that going to UWC and having a literature class where it was such a dedicated space to talk about books, and there were so many really intelligent peers that I had that all kind of ended up in really good universities to speak about these books with. And I had, again, this really amazing teacher. It kind of allowed me to take what was already a passion and just go even further with it and, think deeper about these texts and also think about it in the context of my life and what I want to do in the future. And that's kind of what brought me to wanting to study literature at university as well.
And I guess, so was UWC the first place where you started writing for publication or for maybe school
Yeah.
publications or even local ones?
I started with journalism,
Okay.
and at the start, I thought I really, really wanted to be a journalist. So I wrote for almost every student publication there was.
Were there multiple?
Yeah. So there was a satire publication, and I became the head of journalism for that. And there was the yearbook, which was kind of almost like a news thing, just because it was all the interviews of all the teachers and stuff like that. So I became the head of journalism of that too. So I just kind of went around to all the publications and did different things. I think that creative writing was a much newer thing to me. It came to me in college because at UWC, I was still kind of in a very nascent phase of my writing journey. So I was so much more comfortable writing nonfiction pieces that drew information from the world and that I could take and just synthesize. So I did a lot of that. I struggled, even though I was technically in the creative writing magazine, I struggled to produce poems. I struggled to write stories because I just hadn't tapped into that side of myself yet. But yeah, I did a lot of journalism things, and that's kind of what I wanted to do back then. And my mind changed kind of in college.
And writing and journalism wasn't the only thing you were up to at school, right? So there were a bunch of other extracurriculars.
Yeah, I did dance as well. I produced the Chinese ribbon dance for UN Night in my last year at UWC, which is super fun. So I did scattered dance things throughout, and outside of school, I was doing ballet the whole time. At the same time, we also did this Global Concerns initiative. UWC does Global Concerns, and I kind of was the president of a Global Concerns initiative that sent money to an organization in Brazil that worked with kids in slums. And that was very rewarding. And at the same time, I also taught English at a local kindergarten.
And so were these activities, for example, the local kindergarten, was that through school as well?
That was also through school, yeah.
Okay. And when you were doing all these activities, I guess why were you doing all these activities? It was quite a lot, right? To be balancing it first with the IGCSEs and then with the IB.
I think I wanted to. I think these things weren't compulsory. I think that there are for IB the service hours but I think most people at UWC, at least a lot of people I knew, still exceeded that because all these opportunities were there to get involved with a lot of really amazing initiatives, and also initiatives that were really fun. Like with my GC, we made brigadeiros and we hung out, and
with
we did
your what?
With my Global Concerns initiative. We made food, we hung out. So there was just a lot of things that were tied into these activities that were just super fun and super rewarding, and you could also do something really nice for someone. And with the journalism stuff, that was driven by interest. I enjoyed it. I liked it. And I think that I was a lot more energetic in high school than I am now. I think that's a pretty common experience. You leave high school and suddenly all the joie de vivre you have is gone. But when I was in high school, I had so much energy and I was so excited to do things that every time something showed up, I'd go to a activities fair and I'd put my email on everything. I'd be tell me, I want to know, I want to do this. And
this was all you, right? It's not like your mom was pulling you around.
Not at all. In fact, my parents were like, can you do less? You're kind of stressing us out. But no, I actually just really found a lot of things that I enjoyed, joined a lot of things, thought, okay, I'll quit some probably. And I just didn't quit any of them.
So you just carried through.
I just kept going. I was like,
How did you have time for all of that?
I don't know. I think about this sometimes. I'm like, because when I was in college, I did 3 things. And I committed myself to those 3 things, but they were my 3 things. I didn't have all this stuff.
You're still tired at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And I lived there. So it's not even I had to go home and everything. Yeah. So I didn't have to commute. But when I was in high school, I guess I just wanted to do everything. So all my lunch times, I'd always be busy. My friends would be like, where's Divya?
Oh, you're one of those kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super busy all the time. I had never utilized Google Calendar like I did in high school ever again. I was so organized, and I don't know what happened afterward.
I'm impressed. I didn't know what Google Calendar was in high school. It's only really an after-college thing for me. Before we continue, I would like to take a quick break to remind you to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps us improve and to reach a wider audience to provide further insight into this arduous journey. Also, if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to email us at our email linked in the description below. We'd love to hear from you. Well, I guess for you, it was mainly driven by interest, right? You weren't piling these things on for the sake of doing it. And so there was that element of everything that you're doing. So when you're spending time at lunch or whatever, it's driven by, oh, I really want to do this. I'm interested in this. Not, oh, I have to do this at lunch and then go on to do something else.
I think that, of course, like even if you are driven by interest, there is like a drudgery about some things where, say you're like, I don't know, you're doing like head of journalism stuff and you really like the writing, you really like the work, you really like editing other people's work, but then you have to like spend your lunchtime kind of assigning pieces to people and that's kind of boring. So there's still work that I would be reluctant to do. So it wasn't like I was just like super excited all the time, but I don't know, at the time I was just enjoying being busy, which is strange to say now because now I would never enjoy being busy. But at the time, I really enjoyed being busy. It made me feel like such an adult. So I just did all this stuff.
At the time, did you feel as though that was the way you'd get everything done? To sort of cram your calendar and having everything down over there? It's like, okay, I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to finish off my task.
Yeah, I guess I think the calendar was more for like the face-to-face meetings. I would have to be like in a space at a certain time. I think that my actual work, like my actual work practices. The better question was, did you work better under pressure? Having that constant time pressure? Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that this has been a theme in my life where I work really well under pressure with deadlines. So I have been known to leave things kind of to the last minute, but not like never in a way that I genuinely thought, oh, I'm not going to get this done. So I think that for me, I find it very hard to like really sit down and focus when there are no stakes. So there's a bit of danger, but it's the way I work. I like it. Fair enough. And so when we take stock of your time at UWC, especially in connection to all the different activities that you were doing, it sounds like everything that you collected in your portfolio, quote unquote portfolio, was quite an organic journey of finding all these different things and putting them together. Is that something you'd recommend for other students as well? I think it depends, because I think that I had such a strong interest to begin with, where I was already in a space where I was reading at least one book a week. Like that was kind of how I was already operating, because that was how much I liked this and how much I liked writing, how much I liked all of these things. It was all kind of already reflected in my life and the way I lived. So I would recommend it if you have a passion that you want to follow through with and you kind of know what you need to do to improve yourself in that aspect of your life. But I think that if you're in a more exploratory state where you don't really know what you're interested in, it's harder to create this kind of organic approach to, I guess, building a portfolio or doing all this stuff, because you don't have this thing directing you. So I think it depends on where you're at with yourself and how passionate you feel about the things that you're pursuing. But ultimately for you, you felt as though this organic journey, organic growth was something that served you quite well, right? Especially when it came to discovering your passion for writing. Yeah. Even though at the time it was a little bit more nonfiction in the form of journalism, but it provided you with those various conduits to help you figure it out at the end, right? Exactly. And I think that I was especially lucky because discovering a passion for writing when you're young also means that the university application process becomes a little less stressful, because they're like, write this essay. And I'm like, I can do that, actually. So how was that process for you? I enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed it. I loved writing my Common App essay. One of the strange ones. Like, I had fun in my Common App essay. I thought it was so fun to write. I had a bit more stress with the maybe supplement essays where you had to like, why a university? Just because then you had to do this research and you had to be like, okay, like, I don't want to say anything that's wrong. I don't want to accidentally say anything that's another university. So there's a bit more stress there. But when it came to, especially in the US system, writing things like about myself, it just felt like this fun writing experience. So everyone around you was screaming in horror and then you were just happily typing away. And I was like, I have a new draft. I think it's kind of cute. Yeah.
Do you remember what you wrote about for your common application essay?
I do. I kind of wrote it about sitting still.
Okay.
I wrote my common app essay about doing nothing, and about sitting on the bus and doing nothing, and how that served me, and how
did it serve you?
I think that when you're that busy, or when you're moving through life and you're super busy all the time, and you're in the process of applying to university, which is a super busy, difficult time because you have the SATs, you have this, you have that. And it's applicable to life, and this is an argument I made in later life when I see my parents work, and they were both super overworked and stressed because they both had jobs. And I found that there's something really, really important in just like taking a step back and discovering your thoughts and rediscovering who you are through time that you spend alone, time that you spend decompressing, time that you spend away from everything. So I kind of wrote about how, ironically, in the time that is kind of the negative space in my life where I'm not doing anything, I learned so much more about myself. And I wrote about kind of my interests. I wrote about my interest in philosophy. I wrote about my interest in literature and how all of these things come out of this empty space. So I wrote about doing nothing, but I wrote about kind of who I was in relation to that. So I kind of used that as a device to just talk about all of my academic interests. And it became this like metaphor, which turned out well.
Yeah, so a lot came out of that,
Yeah.
that dead time as well, right?
Yeah.
That silent time. Just very quickly, because you mentioned your interest in philosophy, that was something that you had explored while at UWC as well, right?
So I started the Philosophy Society, and the very iconic Jaden Smith Tweet Week, where we analyzed Jaden Smith tweets through philosophical lenses. So it was super fun. Everyone loved it. I was putting up posters of Jaden Smith. It was great. We also did other things. We also did like applied ethics and all the other very important philosophical things. But it was fun to like start a club. And a lot of my friends actually joined, and they were like, this is actually super interesting. Yeah, philosophy is really interesting. So I roped a lot of my friends into it. And then we got random members, and we actually had a pretty big member base for a while. And it was super fun because you were able to talk about philosophy, but because we were all still children, basically, we're all still like 16, 17, we were allowed to bring in all this like whimsical Gen Z stuff into it as well. Had a lot of fun doing that. And it was nice because I took philosophy in the IB as well, which you can do at some schools.
Oh, so UWC allowed it. Yeah, they didn't allow it in my school.
Yeah. So my philosophy teacher and I had a really close relationship because we talked about books and stuff, and I was very close with her. So
were there any texts? I know it might be difficult to pinpoint, especially for something like this, but were there any specific texts or writers that got you interested in philosophy?
In philosophy, I weirdly have always been a really big fan of Kierkegaard. I just think that his writing's really like beautiful. So him, but that was kind of by accident. That was kind of like I saw a quote on Tumblr, and then I read a book, right? And then other than
that,
that,
Kierkegaard got a quote on Tumblr, and you were like, "Oh, this is a good idea."
I was like, this guy knows something that I do not, clearly. Okay. And then, I think that the first book we read, or the first book I remember reading in full for philosophy, was the classic Plato's Republic, and this was at UWC. I enjoyed discussing it. I can't say that I agree with a lot of it, but I really enjoyed talking about it, and I got a lot out of taking philosophical texts and just having these debates in class. So I thought that was super fun. But yeah, Kierkegaard weirdly liked it. And I think that at the time, I was really into the existentialists, as one is when they're kind of like a 17-year-old and they think they're edgy. We're kind of like, oh, like, yeah, existentialism is a humanism, and I was kind of on that wave for a while, or at least when I was 17, I was like, I am so cool for knowing this.
Has that changed?
Yeah. Now I'm like, having been in classes with enough philosophy bros, I'm kind of like, I am not cool at all. In fact, I am a loser. Probably. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all for today's episode of Dear Applicants. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you found the content valuable and insightful. If you'd like to learn more about our guests or the topics we discussed, be sure to check out our show notes for links and further resources.